Your home is your sanctuary, right? It's the one place on earth you're supposed to feel safe, protected, untouchable. You lock the doors, you draw the curtains, and maybe you set up a security camera for that extra peace of mind. A little electronic guardian watching over your property while you sleep. But what happens when that gadget, that tool of security, becomes a window into a nightmare you never knew existed? What if the footage it captures doesn't make you feel safe, but instead reveals a terrifying secret lurking just outside your walls? For one family, a single backyard camera showed them they weren't just being watched night after night. A man was hiding in the trees, studying them and sketching their every move. His chilling routine was only exposed because of that one hidden camera. And that's just one of the 4 true backyard security camera horror stories we're diving into today. Stories where the lens of a camera pulled back the curtain on a reality that is way more frightening than any movie. Story 1, The Eyes in the Fence. It all started with a feeling. For a woman named Claire, it was that primal chilling sensation that she was being watched. You know, the kind of feeling most of us just brush it off, blaming it on an overactive imagination. Claire lived alone in a small suburban house with a fenced-in backyard. It was her private getaway, a place to read and tend to her garden. But lately, that sense of peace was gone. It would happen when she was in her kitchen, washing dishes at the sink overlooking the yard. She'd catch a flicker of movement by the fence, a tiny parting of the thick bushes between her property and the neighbors. But when she'd look up, nothing, just leaves blowing in the wind. A few days later, she was reading on her patio when the hairs on the back of her neck stood up. She felt a distinct, piercing gaze. She scanned the neighboring windows, no one. She looked at the hedge, nothing. Still, the feeling stuck around, a cold knot in her stomach, telling her she wasn't alone. Paranoia started to set in. She began closing her blinds more often and felt a strange hesitation to even go into her own backyard. The space that once felt like a sanctuary now felt like a stage. This went on for weeks. Claire started to wonder if she was losing her mind. A friend, trying to be helpful, suggested a security camera if someone was really back there. The camera would prove it. If not, maybe she could finally relax. So, Claire bought a simple, motion-activated Wi-Fi camera. She mounted it under the eaves of her back porch, giving it a wide view of the yard, especially that unsettling fence line. For the first few days, it was a relief. The notifications were just squirrels or a stray cat. The grainy night vision showed nothing but dancing leaves. Claire started to believe it had all been in her head. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, her phone buzzed. Motion detected. She opened the live feed, but saw nothing. The yard was empty. The camera had saved a 30-second clip, so she played it back. For the first 10 seconds, just an empty lawn. Then, from the bottom corner of the frame, a hand emerged from the bushes. It was a man's hand, holding something small and dark. The hand carefully pushed a section of the hedge aside, and through the gap, a face appeared. It was her neighbor, a quiet, middle-aged man she'd only ever shared polite waves with. He stared directly at her house, his eyes scanning the back windows, lingering on her bedroom window for way too long. Then, just as carefully, he placed a small black object deep inside the bush on her side of the fence. He pulled his hand back. The hedge fell back into place, and he was gone. Claire's blood ran cold. Her heart was pounding. It wasn't paranoia. It was real. He had been watching her. She immediately called the police. When they arrived, she showed them the footage, her voice shaking as she explained the weeks of feeling watched, with the recording as probable cause. An officer walked over to the hedge. He reached into the exact spot the camera recorded. After a moment, he pulled his hand back out. In his palm was a tiny, crudely hidden pinhole camera, its lens aimed directly at her bedroom window. The investigation uncovered a horrifying campaign of voyeurism. A search of the neighbor's property revealed 2 more hidden cameras. One was hollowed out inside a fence post, pointed at her bathroom. Another was a wildlife camera strapped to a tree, positioned to get a clear view over the fence and onto her patio. When they checked his computers, they found hundreds of hours of footage of Claire, cooking, cleaning, reading, sunbathing, a complete violation of her life, all captured from the supposed safety of her home. The man was charged with invasion of privacy and stalking, and a restraining order was put in place. But for Claire, the feeling of safety was shattered. The house was no longer a sanctuary. It was a constant reminder of the hidden lenses that had turned her private life into a secret show. She sold the house within a year, unable to shake the feeling that the eyes were still there, hidden in the shadows. Story 2: The Silent Siege. The Peterson family thought they had it made. They lived in one of those quiet, safe neighborhoods where kids leave bikes on the lawn. Their house was their fortress, and they decked it out with all the latest smart home tech, a full security system, smart locks, and a network of HD cameras covering every angle outside. They weren't paranoid, just prepared. They trusted that technology was their ultimate shield. They were about to find out just how fragile that shield really was. One Friday night, Mark, Sarah, and their 2 young kids went out for Mark's birthday dinner. They were gone for less than 3 hours. When they got back, everything seemed fine. The door was locked, the lights were off, nothing looked out of place. It wasn't until the next morning that Sarah noticed her jewelry box was empty. Then they realized a laptop, some emergency cash, and Mark's expensive watch collection were also gone. Shaken, Mark's first move was to check the security cameras. He pulled up the app, fully expecting to see crystal clear footage of the thieves. What he found was much more disturbing. Every single camera had gone offline at 8:17 p.m., just 10 minutes after they left. They all came back online at 10:42 p.m., right before they got home. There was a 2.5-hour gap of pure nothing. No recordings, no alerts. It was like that time had just been erased. He called the security company, but they had no answers. All they could see was that the system lost its network connection. Probably a service outage, they suggested, but Mark knew the timing was just too perfect. The police came, but without any forced entry or footage. There wasn't much they could do. The thieves had been ghosts. That evening, feeling defeated, Mark decided to do his own digging. And that's when he remembered. His backyard cameras didn't just stream to the cloud, they also had a backup, recording locally to small SD cards. It was a feature he'd set up and totally forgotten about. With a jolt of adrenaline, he grabbed a ladder, climbed up to the camera over the back gate, and popped out the tiny memory card. He rushed back inside and slotted it into his computer. The footage that loaded onto his screen made his stomach drop. The cloud storage was empty because the Wi-Fi was cut, but the local SD card had kept recording everything. The timeline started just after they left. At 8:21 p.m., 4 minutes after the system went dark, 2 figures appeared at the back gate. They were dressed in black from head to toe, faces hidden by ski masks. They moved with a calm, unnerving confidence. One of them held up a small device with several antennas, a Wi-Fi jammer. That's why the system went offline. These weren't your average burglars. They were pros who knew exactly how to blind modern security. The first camera showed them picking the lock on the gate with ease. They didn't rush. They moved slowly, pointing out the camera Mark was now watching from, and the other one on the patio. They knew exactly where the cameras were, but they didn't bother disabling them, confident the jammer meant no one was watching. It was a fatal mistake. The second camera, aimed at the patio, captured the next step. They walked up to the sliding glass door, and one of them bypassed the lock in under 30 seconds. No broken glass, no noise, just a quiet, clean entry. They slipped inside. For the next 2 hours, the camera recorded an empty, silent yard. Then, at 10:38 p.m., the door opened. The two figures emerged, now carrying a duffel bag full of the Petersons' things. They slipped out the back gate and vanished. A few minutes later, the Wi-Fi signal flickered back on as the jammer was powered down. The police were stunned. The SD card footage changed everything. The thieves' faces were covered, but the HD video caught other details: the specific brand of their shoes, a unique logo on a jacket, and their overall movements. It was enough for detectives to cross-reference with known burglary rings. The footage became the key piece of evidence. Months later, a raid on a suspected crew led to the recovery of some of Mark's watches, and the jacket with the logo was found at the scene. The silent siege on the Petersons' home was solved, not by the fancy cloud system they trusted, but by a tiny, forgotten memory card that was secretly watching the whole time. Story 3: The Secrets in the Shed. Brenda was a pragmatist. When her teenage son started blowing his curfew, she didn't ground him for life. She just installed a security camera. It was a simple, wide-angle camera aimed at the driveway and the old shed at the edge of their property. Her thinking was simple: find out if her son was sneaking out. It was a tool for parental peace of mind. That's it. She never imagined it would unlock a secret her husband had buried for over a decade. Her husband, Tom, was a quiet, regular guy, a devoted father and partner, or so Brenda had believed for 20 years. He was a man of routine. The camera was up for about a month, and mostly just confirmed her son's late-night social life. But as she was scrolling through the recordings one Sunday morning, a different pattern started to show up. A pattern that involved Tom. It started with a clip from 2 weeks earlier, time-stamped at 2:13 a.m. The footage showed Tom walking out the back door and over to the shed. He fumbled with some keys, unlocked the heavy padlock, and slipped inside. He was in there for almost an hour. It was weird. The shed was just for lawnmowers and junk. What was he doing in there in the middle of the night? Brenda kept scrolling. She found another clip from the next week, this time at 3:30 a.m. Again, Tom went to the shed. This time, as he walked back to the house, the motion-activated floodlight caught his clothes. There were dark, damp patches on his jeans and what looked like dirt caked on his boots. A cold, uneasy feeling washed over Brenda. This wasn't a man looking for a lost tool. This was secretive. This was strange. Her mind raced. Was he having an affair, drinking in secret? None of it made sense. The dusty, spider-filled shed wasn't exactly a romantic spot. Checking the camera became her obsession. Every morning, she'd look for new footage, more late-night trips. Sometimes he'd carry a heavy bucket. Other times, he would just stay in there for hours. The breaking point came one Monday morning. Checking the weekend's footage, she saw Tom go to the shed at 1:00 a.m. carrying a large, heavy-duty shovel. He stayed inside for over 3 hours. When he finally came out, he was breathing heavily, his clothes covered in what looked like wet concrete dust. He glanced around nervously before rushing back inside. Concrete. Why was he working with concrete in the middle of the night? That's when a ghost from the past flickered in her mind. A news story from 12 years ago, from a neighboring town. A young woman, a former co-worker of Tom's, had vanished. Her car was found, but she was never seen again. It was a cold case, a local tragedy. Tom had been questioned back then, along with everyone else from her office, but was quickly cleared. Brenda remembered how upset he'd seemed. Her hands were shaking as she searched for the old news articles on her phone. She found the woman's picture. Her name was Sarah. She had disappeared on a rainy April night. Brenda's blood turned to ice. She remembered that night. Tom had come home very late, covered in mud. He'd said he got a flat tire. She had never questioned it. She felt sick. The late night trips, the shovel, the concrete, the pieces were clicking into place, forming a picture so horrific she could barely look at it. She knew she couldn't confront him. With trembling hands, she downloaded all the video clips to a USB drive. She took it to the police station that afternoon and asked to speak with a detective in the cold case unit. She explained everything, her voice barely a whisper. She told them about the camera for her son, the late-night visits to the shed, the shovel, the concrete, and her own buried memories from 12 years ago. At first, the detectives were skeptical, but the footage was undeniably strange. It was enough to get a search warrant. The next day, police descended on their home. Brenda watched from a neighbor's window as they cut the padlock on the shed. Hours later, a team with jackhammers arrived. Under a pile of old tarps in the corner, they'd found a section of the floor with a crudely poured slab of concrete, newer than the rest. As they broke through the slab, they found her, the body of Sarah, the woman who had been missing for 12 years, had been buried under their family shed the entire time. Tom's late-night visits, captured on camera, were him trying to repair the makeshift tomb as it started to break down over the years. The camera Brenda installed to catch her son sneaking out had instead caught a murderer tending to his victim's hidden grave, and finally brought a killer to justice. Story 4: The Artist in the Woods. The Miller family's new home was a dream come true, a charming house at the end of a cul-de-sac, with a big backyard that backed up to a dense patch of woods. For David, his wife Anna, and their 8-year-old daughter, Lily, it was perfect. But that piece was about to be taken apart, piece by horrifying piece. Anna had been the one who wanted a backyard camera just for peace of mind. David finally installed one, pointing it toward the yard and the dark tree line. For weeks, it was just deer and raccoons. But one night at 11:47 p.m., David's phone lit up with a motion alert. The infrared footage was grainy, but it clearly showed a human silhouette standing just inside the woods, right at the edge of their property. The figure was perfectly still, just watching the house. After a minute, it turned and melted back into the darkness. David felt a prickle of unease, but brushed it off. Probably just a teenager taking a shortcut. A week later, it happened again. 1:02 a.m. Same silhouette, same spot, totally motionless. The stillness is what was so creepy. This wasn't someone passing through. This was someone lingering, watching. The sightings became a terrifying routine. 2 or 3 times a week, Always late at night, the notification would arrive. That dark figure, a silent sentinel in the woods. They never came closer, never did anything. They just stood there. The feeling of being constantly watched started to poison their dream life. Their home now felt like it was under siege by a ghost. Things escalated one Saturday afternoon. Lily came running in from the yard, holding a piece of paper. It was a page from a sketchbook, a little damp, and on it was a detailed pencil drawing of the back of their house. Every window, every chair on the patio, it was all there, rendered with obsessive detail. At the bottom of the page, the date from 3 nights prior was written in small, neat print. Pure terror washed over David. This wasn't just watching. This was studying. He grabbed a flashlight and marched to the edge of the woods. He pushed past the first line of trees and, behind a large oak, the same tree from the camera's view, he found a small, makeshift camp, a worn blanket, water bottles, and a sketchbook. With trembling hands, he picked it up. The first few pages were drawings of animals, but then the subject changed. Page after page of their house from different angles at different times of day. Then it got worse. Sketches of their car, license plate perfectly readable, drawings of David mowing the lawn, of Anna watering plants, and then, the most horrifying part, dozens of pages dedicated to their daughter, Lily. Lily on the swing set, Lily playing in the yard, Lily sitting in her bedroom window, which was visible from that exact spot. Each sketch was dated and timed. It was a detailed, illustrated log of their lives, created by the ghost in their woods. David ran back to the house and yelled for Anna to call 911. The police took the sketchbook. Even the veteran officers were disturbed by the sheer volume of drawings. A patrol searched the woods, but the person was gone. The police ran a standard check on registered offenders in the area, and they got a hit. A man released from prison 2 years prior lived less than a mile away. His conviction, stalking, and unlawful surveillance. His M.O. He would obsessively sketch his victims. The police had their suspect. They searched his home and found more sketchbooks filled with drawings of other houses, other families. But the Millers were his latest obsession. As David and Anna looked at the suspect's photo down at the station, they recognized him. He was a man they'd seen walking his dog in the neighborhood, a man who had even waved at them. He was hiding in plain sight. The man was arrested and convicted, thanks to the overwhelming evidence from the sketchbook and the camera footage placing him at the scene night after night. But for the Millers, the woods behind their house would never be the same. The window of their daughter's bedroom no longer looked out onto a peaceful night, but into a space where a monster had stood and watched and sketched. The camera they installed for peace of mind had unmasked the terror at the edge of their world, showing them a horror they could never unsee. A camera can only record what's there. It can't intervene. It can't stop the hand holding the sketchbook, or the thief with the Wi-Fi jammer, or the neighbor with a pinhole camera. It's just a silent, impartial witness. The footage it captures is a cold, hard look at what can sometimes play out in the shadows of the places we feel safest. These stories are a chilling reminder that the biggest threats don't always come with a crash in the night. Sometimes they start with just a quiet flicker on a screen, a single grainy image that proves you are not alone. And sometimes being watched is the most terrifying thing of all. If you have a story you'd like to share, you can submit it to the email in the description below. For more stories that explore the darkness on the other side of the lens, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. You never know what you might see.